This weekend, as a church throughout the United States, we celebrate respecting life in all its forms, from the moment of conception to natural death. We want to always be aware of what that means as well. It's not a one-topic issue. It's about the totality of who we are as human beings and respecting the fact that we are sons and daughters of God. That's basically being pro-life, that everyone is a child of God. Doesn't matter whether they're a grave sinner, whether they're a murderer, prostitute on the street, or just a normal person trying to strive and do good in the world. Everyone has value before God. That does not mean, however, that in the pro-life idea, there isn't accountability and responsibility for our actions, and that there's not consequence for our actions. So in other words, it's not just having respect for life and then let bygones be bygones. No. There's always a consequence, positive and or negative, to what we do and what we fail to do when it comes to being good involving our responsibility to our neighbor. The question was asked of Jesus, what are the two greatest commandments? Jesus said to love God with your whole heart, mind, soul, and strength. And the second is like it, to love your neighbor as you love yourself. In other words, I hear people say things like this: I can't stand our politicians today. You got 100% agreement with me. At the same time, we have to look in the mirror of our soul and say, well, why do I hate that politician? Because when we're lacking at least the capacity to say a simple prayer for the one who's astray, we have to look in our own heart and say to ourselves, am I that lacking in compassion? And is God not compassionate to me and understanding to me in all the struggles of my life? So we're all at different levels of faith, of course. And there is right and there is wrong. There are moral absolutes that never change, no matter how many people in the country think we should be doing it. So a couple of things happened in the last week and a half that have been kind of disturbing to me. And I think as Christians, we should be disturbed by it as well. There are some underlying things that are happening in it that I think are quite disgusting and reprehensible with regards to our faith. When I say the faith, I mean big F. In other words, our traditions, our teachings, our doctrinal understanding of things that never change, no matter who is the Pope, or some silly cardinal, or some wimpy bishop, or a lazy priest intellectually. About 2 weeks ago, it's all started in the papers and everything else that our wonderful cardinal in Chicago, he's not really our cardinal, he's the cardinal of Chicago, decided that he was going to give to the Senator Dick Durbin a Life Achievement Award. And it caused quite a stir, because anybody who has any sense knows that Dick Durbin, who professes to be Catholic, but has been forbidden by his bishop to receive Holy Communion, is as pro-death as you could possibly be. And here you have a prince of the church willing to give this guy an award because he's in favor of illegal immigration, without including the fact that he's also pro-death. There isn't a baby in somebody's womb he doesn't want to kill. And then he has the audacity to think he has a right to Holy Communion. Now, I get it. Some people sitting here right now say, I really don't like it when Monsignor talks politics. Abortion is not politics. So correct your conscience. It is a moral issue of life from the moment of conception, period. No man or woman has a right to kill a child in the womb. You're a vessel used by God for the promotion of life. And the little baby in the womb also has a conscience, because at the moment of conception, when the sperm meets the egg, it's infused with the soul. And therefore, it is a sanctioned life before God, who is the keeper of life and death, alone. And we have been entrusted with a responsibility. And too many Catholic parents say to their daughter and to the boy who knocked her up, "You need to get an abortion. This is going to ruin your life." Were you there teaching her right from wrong before that? And what about accountability and responsibility? You know, the church stands ready to help any person who is pregnant. And the church is always ready to find a baby a home if that person no longer wants. But the church is not in favor of us killing the child. We'll even support you and help you if you want to bring it to term and keep it. Always. Because that's pro-life. All the way around. So in Chicago, a bastion of liberal Catholicism, has been for decades and decades and decades, ever since Vatican II particularly. You got this moronic cardinal, and I have no respect for the man. I respect his office as a prince of the church, but not the man. He's doing grave harm to the church by the things he promotes and the things that he says and the things that he writes. He's not my bishop, so I don't care. But he's doing grave damage. Then if that weren't enough, I shouldn't have to correct what the Pope said this week. But I'm going to correct what the Pope said this week. Because he spoke as a man, not as the Pope. He spoke his personal opinion, not with the authority of the church. So I'm going to correct him. When asked about the issue in Chicago, he said, "Well, I'm not very familiar with the situation," and proceeded to tell us about everything with the situation. Note to Rome: stop giving interviews off the cuff, because you'll always embarrass yourself when you're not thought through what you need to say. Plus, you're the Pope. When you say something, that matters more than Monsignor Hines. Because nobody cares what Monsignor Hines says. But when the white-robed head of the church speaks, even when he's speaking as a man, think it's the same as if he's speaking for the church and God. In this case, he was not speaking for the church nor God. And he said, well, you know, if you're pro-life and you're for capital punishment, you're not pro-life. The teaching of the church has been clear for nearly 2,000 years that under certain circumstances, the state has the right to put to death a killer. It's that simple. Since Pope Francis, who on his own authority as a man decided that capital punishment is something he doesn't like, he forced it on the whole church without looking at the whole history, without looking at the complications and the conversation with regards to what it is. Of course, capital punishment isn't the best solution, but sometimes the state has to put to death people who are unredeemable with regards to their presence in this world, not their eternal soul. So, well, can they be redeemed? Of course they can. They can go to confession. They can find salvation with Jesus Christ. They can be resolved in that regard. But the consequence of their action has to be punished. It's called accountability and responsibility, which is what I was referring to at the beginning of the homily. Then the Pope says, as if that weren't bad enough, he says, you're also not pro-life if you don't protect illegal immigrants and then treat them badly as if the church has it in her mind to treat anybody that way badly. But the church has always held every state, every government, every country has a right to protect itself and decide who can come in and cannot. If you wish to come into the country, you come into the country legally. There are tens of thousands of people who have done that and are ticked off by those who have been coming through for whatever agendas there might be. But we treat people with kindness and generosity. But there is a consequence and a punishment and sometimes a dismissal from the country. Here's the problem. It wasn't bad enough that he said that if you're pro-life, you got to allow anything. This is part of a philosophy, a theory within the church that's been going on for about 5 decades now. And part of it was from the Cardinal Bernardine time, another scandalous cardinal of the church, who proposed to everyone a seamless garment theory. That is that everything in the world is pretty much equal, and there's no gravity to anything we do, or a difference in the way that we do things. Well, he's completely, first of all, anti-biblical. St. John, in the very first epistle he wrote in the New Testament, says there are 2 types of sin. The first sin is mortal. The second sin is venial. He calls them severe and small. The church calls it mortal and venial, because a mortal sin breaks with the Lord. So already there's a distinction between sin. And the church has always held there's a difference between you Googling a beautiful woman or a handsome man and killing someone outright because you don't like them or you disagree with them or whatever reason you might do it. There's a difference. Any reasonable person knows this. Killing a child in the womb is not equivalent with stealing a loaf of bread from the store. There are degrees of sin. And there always have been and always will be until the Lord comes again. So in the gospel today, the apostles say, increase our faith. But right now, we seem to have a pope who is embracing the previous pope who was really good in some ways, but in many ways confused a lot of people in the church. And now they're starting this synod on synodality. If that confuses you, good, and then don't look it up. Because it's ridiculous. We meet people where they are at, but we also call them to conversion. We don't say it's okay to live this lifestyle over here or that thing over there, or rip parts of your body out because you're confused about whether you're a man or a woman. We challenge people to embrace Christ and bring themselves in conformity with His will and His command. That's what we do. Increase our faith. Stop giving in to the world's stupidity, please. Stop thinking that you're being compassionate when compassion also requires responsibility. If the man is an alcoholic and he wants to change, I have compassion for the man who is an alcoholic and I will help him to change. But if he's not willing to change, there's nothing I can do for him until he hits the hardest part of his life and realizes the only way he can escape is if he decides by his own strength to climb out of the hole he has made. So it's important for us to be mindful of where we're at, who we are, and what we're about. The church exists not to be on a journey with people as if it's okay to just walk without accountability and responsibility. The responsibility of the church is to save souls, Yours and my responsibility is to save our soul. That means we have to be accountable, because there will be consequence to what we do. So it is Respect Life Sunday, and we respect all life. So start thinking and acting and treating as if we respect all life. I'm watching on the news all these crazy things that are just going on. Anyways, the best thing to do is to pray. You might say to yourself, that seems useless. Well, that's only useless for people who really don't believe. For the believer, prayer is the answer. Many of these things have to be decided by God and resolved with God. Man is held accountable as to whether or not he's going to be responsible. And our part is to be wise. God gave us brains to think things through and a heart to live it in such a way that it is about the love of God. So, the apostles say, increase our faith. Oh Lord, I pray, increase my faith. Increase the faith of the people of God. Let us always be pro-life, but also take responsibility for life and be accountable for your actions. Think things through. Reason and love. Be pro-life. Increase our faith, O Lord.